Hey guys, we'll learn the basics of Dart today. So, first things first, as it's true for many programming languages, the program always starts in a function called as the main function. So, this is how you write a main function. It's called void main, open brackets, open, and here you can write your code. So, print hello world. All right, and then when we run this, okay, there's a missing semicolon. Oops. Right, when we run this, it prints hello world. All right, so this is how you write a very basic program, a main function and the function body. All right, so now let us cover some basic things called as data types and variables. So what is a variable? A variable is a name given to a memory allocated for values. Let's consider like int a. If int a, what is a? A is called as a variable name and int is called as a data type. As the name suggests, int is for storing integers. So a stores integers as its values. So a is equal to 10 and here print a. Right. So when we hit run, let's wait. Okay, there we go. It printed a. So there are several other data types as well, such as string, s is equal to hello. Okay, and you can print s over here. Run. Okay, there we go. All right, so that is string. So there's one more thing that we have to cover. That is that, for example, let's consider a variable int a is equal to 10. Now you want to print a and s together. So what would you do? You can do s plus a. But when we do that, we will get an error. Let's see what it is. It says that we cannot add an integer type to a string type. Alright, that is fair because s is a string and a is an integer. So what you do is there's a special annotation to print this thing. So this is how you do it. You wrap it in double quotes and you use the dollar sign. Alright, now if you hit run, is going to print hello 10 because you can add a string to a string and it's going to append those two strings one after the other. But here, instead of having a string inside, you're going to use the dollar notation. If there's a complicated data type, you can do it like a, like this as well. This is also correct. So if we hit run now, it prints hello 10. All right, so that is these are some of the basic data types. There's also called as a boolean b is equal to either true or false. All right, so this is there. Okay, let me go over some of the basic ways to actually initialize variables. So if I just do int a, this is called as a declaration. All right, now if I do int b is equal to 10, this is called, one second, let me just type this out, declaration. If I put int b is equal to 10, this is called initialization. And if I do a is equal to 20 over here, this is called as an assignment. All right, so this is the basic terminology. What else? Let's come to one second. Let me stop recording. All right, so next we have a couple of more data types that you will use, which are important. As you know that there are other programming languages have things called as arrays, right, where you store a bunch of elements of similar data type. Okay, Dart has something similar. It is called as a list. So list L is equal to 1, 2, 3. print L. All right, now if I hit run, it is going to print 1 comma 2 comma 3. Now if I include a character among these, will this throw an error? Let us see. It does not throw an error. Why is this? Even though these are integers and this is a character, they by logic, standard logic, this should throw an error because these are dissimilar data types. Why it's not throwing an error is because by default, this is how you strong type, how you provide data types to this thing. So this is by default called as a dynamic. Okay, so what dynamic means is that by default list is of dynamic type, which means you can have a mixture of several data types within the list. Now if I were to specifically provide a data type here called integer, this will throw an error. Now if I hit run, it gives us an error that string cannot be assigned to a variable of type int. This means that we are specifying that this list is supposed to have only integers, but we have a character because by default it was dynamic. Now we have strong typed it to int. All right, now if I change this to string, then all of these will give us an error. All right, so this is the basic this data type. This is really powerful. You will be using this data type a lot. So this is an important data type. There are several ways to add items to a list and all, but I'll share you the doc so that you can go over it. All right, so sorry, there's one more data type. It's called as a map. Now if you aren't familiar, from server sometimes you get a JSON. A JSON file would look something similar like this. It would be name, it will be Nitin, and it will be something like age, it will be 21. All right, so this is sorry. All right, so this is what you call as a JSON. There's a way to store something called as there's a way to store this JSON in Dart, and this is what we called as a map. It's called a map data type. Map m is equal to Control V. All right, and now if I print map, print m, let's see what it prints. Oh shit, okay. Okay, there's a semicolon missing here. Oops. All right, so it's going to print name Nitin and age 21. Now what do you think is the data type of this map over this? What is x comma y? So as you can see that x is nothing but the data type of the left side elements over here. So these are of type string, both name and age, but on the right side one is a string and another is an integer. So x is nothing but string and y is nothing but dynamic. All right, so if I hit run, we can see that even after strong casting it, it's Nitin and 21. There's no error. Now what if I give a string over here as a second data type as well? That time, as you can see, this will throw an error. Let's run it and let me show you that. Run error int cannot be assigned to a variable of type string. So what you have to do is you have to give string also. You have to give 21 as a string over there, and you have to hit run. Let's wait. Okay, there we go. So that is maps. There is a way to add data to maps. This is how you do it. You give m of key. This is called as a key value pair. The left side of this colon is called a key and the right side is called as a value. All right, so name is key, Nitin is value, age is another key, and 21 is another value. So how you add elements to a map is you're gonna do map of key is equal to value. All right, if you do this, it's going to add a key gender with the value male over here. So now if we hit run, all right, okay, there we go. We have name Nitin, age 21 and gender male. So that is how you add keys to a map. There are a lot more functions for maps. I'll say again, you can refer the documents for more information. All right, I'm only covering the basics. All right, so that is maps right now. So that is there. Okay, now finally let's dive into functions. Now let's have a function. Okay, let's do a simple program. So int a is equal to 10 plus 20. Sorry, a is equal to 10 plus 20, and I'm going to print a. All right. Now if I program, now there's a way to perform this addition in a separate function called, let's assume that we'll define a function called void add of, and here we are going to do a is equal, sorry, int a is equal to 10 plus 20, and I'm going to do print a over here. All right, and I'll be removing all of this code, and I will call that add function on the top just by doing this. All right, so what's going to happen? That always starts from the main function. It doesn't matter how many functions you have, it always looks for a function called as a main. Then it's going to enter the function. We can remove this as well, and then it's going to call a function within this. Once you call a function, the control goes over here. All right, it's going to execute this. It's going to do int a is equal to 10 plus 20, and it's going to print this value. And then we are going to do a print over here, print after addition. After addition, let me just demonstrate it. Before addition, and here we are going to do print inside add function. All right, now if we run this code, here we go. So first is before addition. As you see, it will always enter the main function. So before addition, then the control goes to the add function block. It does inside add function, it prints out a, and the control comes back to the next line of the main block. Then it does print after addition, and that's the output over there. Now, what if you don't want to print these exact values and you want to provide values to this function to use? That is also possible. How you do it is, you are going to do int x comma int y. Okay, int x comma int y. So the add function accepts two values over here. These values are called arguments. For each argument you have to provide a data type and a variable name. All right, now here you can access those arguments and give, instead of 10 plus 20, x plus y. All right, and here you can see that add function is expecting two values. So I'm going to give 20 comma 30. All right, now if we hit run, it's going to print 50. So we are giving these two values to x and y, and the function is going to use x and y to perform the addition. That is how you pass values to a function. All right, now let me go over named functions. So this is how you do it. You are going to one second. Okay, you are going to wrap the entire argument list inside flower brackets. So what happens when you do this? When you do this, you can see that the add function, you have to give the parameters like this instead now, and y as 30. So this is called as named parameters. Named parameters is when you want to specify which value gets which variable gets which value, so to give it more clarity as to what value is going to which variable. That is why you use named parameters. This is also called as an optional arguments. I'll go over that in a second. So when we run this, it is going to be the same. So this is something called as a name parameters. Now let's do this. Now if we remove one argument over here, will this throw an error? No, it will not. because uh, since this name parameters are also called as optional arguments. What does optional arguments means? It means that you do not have to give every single value over here. You can omit some values, but you should be careful while you use them. Right now we are omitting y, so I'm not giving y over here. So let me assume that I won't be using y and only use x. So when I hit run, it does not give us an error. Now what if I remove this flower brackets? Okay, if I remove this flower brackets and I give only one value, it is still showing me an underline over here, which means it requires compulsorily another value. Alright, so in case you want to have optional arguments or you want to specify which variable gets what value, if you want to have more control over what is giving what value, you are going to use name parameters over here. Alright, so this is how you do it. Let's reset everything to x plus y. Let's remove this, let's remove this, let's remove this. Okay, now let's assume that you don't want to have any variables over here. Alright, and you want to, and int a is only available in the main function over here, and I want to print a now. Print a. I don't have int a over here, and I want, this is something called as a return type. A function can always return a value. How you are going to do it? You are going to replace this void with a data type that you are returning. It will be int add, and you are going to end it with a return statement. Alright, so and then what you're going to do is a is equal to addition of x plus y. What is happening here? Now this int specifies what type of value it's returning. As we can see that it's adding two integers, and x plus y will be an integer. You're going to return an integer, and that's why we are specifying the data type int over here. When you do a return keyword over here, the function will send a value back. So you have to store that value inside a variable over here, and we are storing it in a, and we are printing a over here. Alright, so now if you run this program, we are going to print 50. Now if you can also change this, right? Instead of having int, you can have a string over here, you can have a string over here, and you can have the return type string over here and string over here. So what you're doing is you're going to pass two strings over here. Okay, 1 second. Let me convert this to strings because it's not going to parse. Right, so I'm passing two strings. Two strings are here. I'm adding two strings and I'm returning them. So the data type is also a string. And you also have to accept the same data type that the function will be returning. So if I run this, it's going to print 2030. There we go. So that is how you return values from how to get back values from a function. That is it, I guess, for functions. What else? What's next now? Control flow and exceptions. All right. So right now what we'll tackle is loops and statements and everything. All right. Now let's have a variable called int a is equal to 10. So int a is equal to 10. So now I want to print okay, now let's have two variables. All right, int a is equal to 10 comma b is equal to 20. Now I want to print a is greater than b if a is greater than b. All right, so I want to check that. The way you do that is by using conditional statements. What are conditional statements in Dart? It's nothing but if else statements and switch case statements. All right, so right now we'll only use if else statements. So for example, we'll use if a is greater than b, I'm going to print a is greater. All right, so this is an if statement over here. Now when I run this, it's not going to print anything. Oh shit, sorry. Okay, so why is that? Because this condition is not being satisfied. A is 10, b is 20, but b is greater than a. So that is why we have something called as an else block over here. So what does the else block do is, if this condition fails, it is going to print this block over here. Okay, more are joining. Nice. Okay, so print shit, B is greater. Okay, so now when I run this, it's going to print B is greater. So that is a very basic if else statement. Now there is something else we can do. It's called as an if else if ladder. Okay, if else if B is greater than A. All right, let's have B and A the same thing. Now I'm checking for okay, let me format this. Now there are two things I'm checking. So if A is greater than B, I'm going to print A is greater. Else, if you want to have a condition for else as well, you're going to have an if over here. This is called as an if else if ladder. Okay, so I'm also checking if B is greater than A. It will print B is greater. So when I run this, what will be the output? I have both the values same over here. So what will be the output over here? Could anyone tell me?
Output.
What? I didn't quite get that. What did you tell? Fine. Yeah, it doesn't give us any output because both this condition, despite this being in an else block, we have an explicit condition over here. Both of this will fail. But in the end, you can give else block. Both are equal. Oh shit. Okay. Have to print. Both are equal. All right. So now when I hit run, it's going to print both are equal. So if else. So this is how it's going to work. So this is called as a if else if ladder. Next we'll come to switch statements. All right. Now let's remove B. Okay, it's called a switch case. It's called switch statement. So in switch statement, what you're going to pass is you're going to pass any value over here. I'm going to pass A. All right. Now let's have case A is equal to 1 or int A is equal to 1. Now switch A I have. Now I can have case 0. What does case 0 do? Case 0 is nothing but it's going to match this case number with the value that you have provided over here. All right. So case 0, I'm going to print A is 0. Okay, and I'm going to have to put a break statement. Remember, don't forget to put a break statement after a case. All right. So next thing is case 1. I'm going to print A is 1. I'm also going to break this. All right. Now when I hit run, it's going to print A is 1 because the value of A over here is being fed to the switch statement, and the case number is going to match with the switch statement over here, and it's going to print the appropriate result. Now what if I don't put break over here? I told you, right, you have to put break is compulsory. Could anyone tell me what will happen if I don't put break over here?
Error.
Let's see. Yeah, there is an error because the switch case may fall through to the next case. This is throwing an error, but when you are coding, right, what's going to happen is if you don't put a break over here, it's going to check the case over here. It's going to print this case and also print this one. It's going to do both of these things. That is what you call as a fall through. That's what fall through means. It's going to print every single case if you don't put a break. All right. So if you put a break, that will be this thing. Now what if I have A is equal to 2 over here, but I don't have a case for it. All right. So switch case gives us something called as a default. If every single case fails, sorry about this. Yeah. So if every single case fails, it's going to do the default case. So in the default case, we'll print A is neither 0 or 1. Now when I hit run, it gives A is neither 0 or 1 because both these cases have failed because it couldn't match anything with 2 given over here, and it's going to execute the default case. Alright, so that is switch case. Now let's do for loops. Now, no, not for loops, any loops. Now, for example, I want to print values of a from 0 to 10. What I'm going to do? I'm going to do print 0. I'm going to do print 1. I'm going to do this 10 times. No. What if they ask me to print? What if I need to print the value of what if I have to print numbers from 0 to 100? I can't do 100 print statements, right? So that is where loops come. What loops do is it runs iteratively. It keeps circling until it fails a condition. So let's demonstrate this with an example. All right. So let's take the very first basic loop called as the for loop. The for loop has three parameters over here. The first one is the iterator, we call it. So you can initialize the iterator and give it a starting value. Okay. Now you are going to give it a condition where it has to come out of the loop. What is the condition over here? I want to print this up to 100. So I is less than or equal to 100. So unless it's less than or equal to 100, the condition will prove true over here. Now after executing whatever is inside, I want to increment the value of I. This is called as an increment operator. It will add +1 to the value of the current variable. All right. Now inside what I'm going to do is I'm going to print I over here. So what is happening over here? Let's see. Let's not keep it 100. Let's keep it 10 for now. So when I hit run, it's going to print 0 to 10. Okay. Now what is happening over here? This is called as an initializer. This statement is executed only once at the starting of the for loop. So it has only executed it once and it has set I is equal to 0. That's all. And after it set I is equal to 0, it is going to print I. It has printed 0 over here. Next it is going to go back over here and is going to increment the value of I. I in memory it will become 1 and then it comes to check this condition over here. It comes sorry, in the beginning itself is going to check this condition and then enter. It's going to come back, increment value and check the condition for the next iteration. So I is 1 in memory, 1 is less than or equal to 10. It is true. It's going to enter this loop now. It is not going to go to the statement ever again. Alright, only for the first time it's going to do that. So it's going to print 1 over here. Next we are going to go back to this statement again. It's going to increment the value of I to 2. So once it does that, it's going to again check the condition less than or equal to 10, it prints 2. So it goes up to 10 over here. After it prints 10, it comes over here. It becomes, I becomes 11. So 11 is less than or equal to 10. It is false. So it is going to break out of the for loop and it is going to end over there. So that is our basic for loop. Now, alright. So here we know the number of iterations which is equal to 10. So there are cases where you don't know what iterations are going to do or whatever like that. So what that time you're going to do is you're going to print int a. Now this is the second type of for loop. It is called as the while loop. While a is less than 10. Okay, let's print a is equal to 0. While a is less than 10, less than or equal to, oops. Print a. Oh my god, repeating. Print a. And then I'm going to increment the value of a over here. So this will give us the same result, but this is a different type of this thing. Now you're only giving the condition over here. You're not giving the increment, you're not giving the initializer, you're not giving anything. Now if I forget to put a plus plus, what do you think will happen over here? Can anyone tell me? I forget to increment a and I've only given a condition over here. What is going to happen?
It will display 0.
How many times?
10 times.
But I'm not incrementing a, right? A is always 0. Yeah, tell.
Yeah, loop will execute only one time.
Wrong. It will execute infinite number of times. I'll tell you why. So first I enter the while loop. While loop is checking if a is less than or equal to 10. Is it true? 0 is less than or equal to 10. It is true. It is going to print 0 over here. Okay. Now it is going to go back up. It It's going to again check is a is less than or equal to 10. The value of a is still 0. 0 is less than or equal to 10. Again it's going to print 0. Again it's going to go back. A is not incremented at all. Okay, I've commented this out. This doesn't exist. Okay, now a again it is 0 itself. Again it's less than or equal to 10. Again it's going to print 0. Again it's going to go back. So it keeps doing this. The condition never fails. It never comes out of the while loop. Okay, so you should always have a condition so that the while loop will fail. So usually that is why we prefer going for for loops and stuff, but while loop has its place when you do not know the number of iterations. Okay, now there is one more loop that we have to cover. It is called as the do while loop. Do print a is equal to print a is equal to a plus plus while a is less than or equal to 10. Now this is the only for loop where you have to use a semicolon in the end. In no other for loop you should use a semicolon outside. Okay, that is one thing you have to keep it in mind. Now when I hit run, it's going to print the same thing. So what is happening over here? I'm going to execute this exactly once in the previous loops, right? Let me in for int I is equal to 0, I is less than or equal to 10, I plus plus. Okay, are you kidding me? Okay, there we go, I plus plus. Okay, this is one for loop, and in the other one also it was like this, right? While let's do this, while I is less than or equal to 10. Okay, don't put a semicolon over here. Now in both these statements you are checking the condition in the beginning. So for loop int I is equal to 0, and it's going to check the condition and only then enter the block over here. Okay, and even the while loop is also the same. It is going to first check the condition of this and only then enter the block. Okay, how is this fundamentally different? It is first going to execute this block and then check the condition. That is how do while is different. So for example, you want to print a menu. For example, there's a menu card where you have to choose which burger you want. So you have, before the user selects an option, you have to at least display the menu, right? So that is where you're going to use a do while and things like that. You won't be using this that much, but it's necessary for you guys to know every kind of looping statement. So that is loops. I hope it's clear. Do you want me to repeat any loop? Anybody? All right. Okay, fine. Let's go to the next one then. Okay, exceptions, right? Now you know that let's say int b is equal to let's not declare anything for a. Int b is equal to 10 plus a. All right. Now I'm going to do print b. Could anyone tell me what the output of this will be? Okay. Anyone? What will be the output of this? Okay, let me do it even simpler. Something, the example that I've already taken. Let's have this as a string a is equal to hello. Now I'm going to put int b is equal to 10 plus hello string over here. What will be the output over here for this? Anyone? It's
Error.
literally, yeah, it's literally on the screen. So it gives us an error. So when I run this, right, it gives us an error. Do you want this error to appear in your app? Yes or no? Do you want the user to see this error, or do you want the developers to handle this error or things like that? Do you want this error to appear to the user? Yes or no? Because an app can encounter several errors while it's running. So when an error occurs, should the user look at an error message like this? Anyone? Come on guys, it's an yes or no answer. Should the end user, should we display such an error to the end user? Now while you are using Instagram, if you look at
No.
this error, right? If you're using Instagram, something like this error shouldn't appear on your screen. So there is a way to handle this error. Such errors are inevitable, okay? So this thing called as a try catch statement. It exactly what the name implies is you're going to try a block of code, and if you see any errors, you're going to catch those errors. So this is how you're going to do. Try. You're going to put all of this inside this block over here. Okay, 1 second. Okay, you're going to try and you're going to catch. You're going to catch an exception. An exception is what an error is. Okay, so you're going to catch an exception. I'm going to print cannot add int and string. All right, so when I hit run now, oh 1 second, why is this happening? Okay, Dartpad is like that. No, let me do this thing. Let me oops 1 second, let me not add this over here. Let me do b plus yeah, I hope this won't give an error. That is pretty smart, so trying to get an error working is difficult for me. Okay, b comma yeah. Okay, fine, this should probably give us an error. No, it does not. How do I show an error? How do I show an error to you guys? 1 second. Let me just 1 second. Let me just Google it. Google for an example. Dart try catch. Okay. This is a simple thing that we can take. It's called as a division by zero error. All right. So int a is equal to 10. Now I'm going to print a divided by 0. Can you divide a number with 0? Can anyone tell me if you can divide a number with 0? Anyone?
No.
Right. So Dart is going to throw an error when you do this. So that is what we are going to catch right now. Run. Infinity. Are you kidding me? Why are you like this, Dart? No, in any other programming language this would produce an error and it's going to enter this block, but apparently Dart doesn't want to do it. Let me just copy this then. I give up. Sometimes even me. Okay, what's happening over here? I'm going to print, I'm going to assign int x is equal to 12, y is equal to 0, and I'm going to give a result. And here I'm going to do on exception. Now let me just do catch. I'll get to the on exception later. Catchy. Please work. Alright, so finally, something that I can demonstrate to you guys. Alright, what's happening over here? Int x is equal to 12, int y is equal to 0. Simple initialization, and I'm declaring result. In this, I'm trying to do x divided by y. So I'm trying to divide 12 by 0, and I'm trying to store that into a result. Division by 0 should not be possible. So it is going to give an error. This block will give an error. But we have a catch over here. What catch does is it catches that error and it tries to do something. This is something called as error handling. So you're going to catch that error and you're going to do something with that error. So let's see what exact error that we got. We got catch E, right? Now let's print E over here. When we hit run, unsupported operation, result of truncating division is infinity. Alright, so that is our error. Now there is something called as an on statement now. instead of doing the catch this thing, there's an on statement. Let me just go back to that now. On exception as E. All right. Are you kidding me? Even if it is empty. Fine. Okay, you can have a particular exception appear over here. For example, this is integer by division by zero exception. Now let's do this. I forgot. I'm so confused between Java and this. So let's try running this now. Okay, there is no. Okay, let's see the list of Dart exceptions. I know this is a bit of this thing. Okay, let's just take any location. This thing. Okay, just take a format exception. Okay, cool. Let's take a format exception then. Control C, Control V. All right. So now I'm putting a format exception. Now if I hit run, it is going to not give us any value because this is an error, right? This is supposed to give an error over here, but it's not giving an. But in the previous thing that we saw that it used to enter this block. That is because it is going to catch every single type of exception. Now we use an on statement if you want to catch a particular exception. So in this case, our particular exception is the this thing. Integer division by zero exception. This particular exception, by using the on statement, you're catching it. Now if I hit run, okay, 1 second. Excuse me, run. Why? Okay, 1 second. Someone wants to join. Okay, try catch is not going as expected. What do I do? What did I do wrong? Oh, did I spell this wrong? No. Huh. All of a sudden, how does this happen? See, I have no idea it was working before. Okay, fine. Let's check this. At least you understood try catch, right? You want me to explain try catch once again? Anyone? Anybody? I hope you understood what try catch does right now.
Can you try without entering E in catch?
Okay.
I mean without entering any value into catch.
Oh, okay. All right. Got it. Okay, it's still running the previous one. Oh, okay. Admit. All right. So this is how a function is built, right? So inside catch, I don't think this will give us a documentation, but some functions will require an argument over here. Okay. So that time when I hit capital E, you can give any variable over here as long as it's a variable. But when I don't give anything, no, some functions are built in a way that you should provide something for them to accept. Because as you saw before in the functions, if you remember, I had a function called int add is equal to int x comma int y, right? You remember this? So here what was happening was, if I did not give y over here, it used to give an error, if you remember, expecting y variable. So this function inside the Dart library is built in such a way that it is always expecting a variable. It is not a named parameter like this. This thing means you can omit, but it's a compulsory parameter. You have to provide an E over here. That's what try is giving it to catch. So you can provide any variable for E. You can provide A also over here, and it's going to print A. Let me just show you. Run. See, it's going to print A. You can give any character over here to use as an exception string. All right, so that is try catch. Anyone has any other doubts? Okay, I guess nobody has any other doubts. So let's get to object oriented programming. Okay, this will be good. Let's see, how do I explain this one? Okay, void main, let's have this now. Now you want to let's consider this is called as a classes and objects. All right, so class student, um, okay, why is this giving an error? Undefined class functions, blah 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 blah. I don't know if I can. Oh shit, no wonder. There we go. Okay, string name is equal to, then string age is equal to 21. String age, wow, I am a genius. Int age is equal to 21. All right, so I don't think you can do this anyways. Okay, fine. And now you are going to have a function over here, void print student. I'll just go over how you're going to access all this. Print name, comma, $age, because it's an integer. All right. So this is our class over here. Class is a blueprint. Okay, what is your problem? Too many positional arguments. Oh shit, okay. There we go. Sorry, my bad. Okay, cool. So we have name, comma, age over here. So we're printing our name and age. So this is a class. What is a class? A class is a blueprint. All right. What a blueprint does is you can have several methods of a blueprint. Let me just show you. Okay, let me start simple. Okay, so I have name over here, age over here. How do you access a function within a class? You create something called as an object. Okay, so how do you create an object? You create student s. Okay, and s dot print student of. This is how you are going to do it. So what is student? Student is the class name that you have given over here. Class is it's like a user defined data type. All right, you can have several things over here. You can have it give your own function also over here. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a object over here. What is an object? An object is an instance of student over here. All right, you can have several objects. Let's go through all of that right now. So you have student s over here, and how do you access this print statement is s dot operator function name. The dot operator is used to access the variables over here. You can also access the variables like this. Print s dot name. Now if I hit run, okay, it doesn't want to run. Wait, did the previous one give an error? One second, I don't know what's happening. Giving a string, I'm giving her this thing. Student s. Why though? Why are you not working? Okay, something is wrong. What is wrong? I have no idea. Okay, let us remove. Okay, bro, I think I know why. Now if I hit run, still not doing it. Why? Let me see. Let me try doing this. Maybe I'm forgetting the fundamentals myself. I apologize. Now if I hit run, please give some output. Hello. Okay, what do I do? What is wrong? Everything seems right. Oh, don't tell me. Don't tell me. Oh, okay, fine. Okay, so you don't have to do this. Let me just do this now. All right, so what is happening? Let me tell you. Okay, sorry about that small thing. I forgot to put this over here. So we have a class over here. A class has two variables. It has my name and okay, my age is not 10, but fine. Okay, so we have a name and we have an age over here, and we have a function inside a class. It's called as void print student, and I'm going to print that this thing over here. So now how do I access all of these? The way to access this is by using something called as an object. An object is an instance of a class. So how you are going to do that? You are going to declare student S, and then you're going to initialize it with an instance S to your class name with an this thing brackets over here. So that time S will have a copy of all of this. You can also do this student S1 is equal to student of. Okay, and if I do S1 dot print student, it's going to print both of this. So each one of these objects have become a copy of this entire class. It's same thing like you have a blueprint of a building, right? You can have several buildings built off of one single blueprint, and everything will be the same. It will have all the same. It will have the same room layout. It will have the same building height and everything like that, because it is based off of a same blueprint. So it's the same thing over here. This class student is like a blueprint of a building, and each object over here that you're declaring is a building built based off of a blueprint over here. So that is what classes and objects are. Now you're telling me that what if I want to have different values for each object? So that is what we are going to do by using constructors. What are constructors? Constructors are functions, but they have the same name as the class name. So, and they don't have any return type. You can see that every function till now has either void, int, string, or anything like that. But a constructor is within a class. It has the same name as the class name. It's called student. Okay. And here what you're going to do is you can initialize any of these values over here. Name is equal to Nitin and age is equal to 21. Okay, you can do this. The output will literally be the same for now. Okay, running. I might have to re-record the first 20 minutes of this thing session because I couldn't record it. I hope it's still recording. Yeah. Okay, so it prints the same exact thing. Now what you want to do is you want to have each object to have unique values. For example, I want to store multiple students now. Alright, so how am I going to do that? As I told, student works similar like a function. It can also accept parameters over here. Now we can do it as, okay, someone joined. You can use the links that I added in the calendar, but fine. String n comma int a, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign name, so assign n to name and a to age. Now you can see over here that student is a constructor and it's accepting and it wants values over here. So I have to give it values. So what values I'm going to give? I'm going to give Nitin comma 21. Okay, that is one. Next I'm going to give anyone else. Let's have this guy, and he's also, let's say he's 20. All right. Now what I'm doing over here, this is a blueprint just like before. It's literally the same, but Each object, instead of getting default values Nitin and 21, I'm going to give my own values to this. So I'm giving Nitin and 21 over here to object S, and NKB and 20 over here to object S1. Now when I hit print, it's going to print Nitin 21 and NKB 20. So that is how we are going to use a constructor to assign values to classes over here. Alright, anyone has any doubt with classes so far? Anyone has any doubt? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Alright, I hope I've made it really simple for you guys to understand. If not, you can always come back. It will be uploaded tomorrow. Tomorrow evening I'll upload it. So by then I hope that you guys will be able to understand all of this. Okay, so that is classes and objects over here. So what else? Name constructors. Okay, this also we can do, right? So I talked about name constructors, string n and int a. Now how we are going to give this is the same as before. If you remember, a is equal to, okay, let's start with n, Nitin, and okay, let's do this, n Nitin comma a will be 21, and over here n will be nkb and a will be 20. All right, so when I hit run, it will be the same thing. Let's wait until this thing works. Hey, it's taking its own sweet time again. Don't worry, if this was on your laptop, it will be like super fast, but yeah, I don't want to get into actually installing that this weekend. Okay, so it amounted to the same thing. Now, it was the same concept, right? You remember that we passed flap brackets as optional arguments to functions. That's the same thing we are doing to constructors here as well. So for example, if you have several string variables like this, to be sure to which one you're assigning anything, that's where you're going to use name parameters. Now as I told before, you can also omit these things. If I do omit these things, what will be the output? It's going to print null because I'm not passing the parameter a over here, and by default the value of age over here is null, and that's what is getting printed. So this is how you're going to use name parameters with constructors. Okay, so that is classes and objects. What else should I be covering? Okay, there is this thing called as abstract classes. Let me tell you what those are. Let me remove everything. Okay, now I'm going to call this as a class person. Okay, let's go abstract class person, abstract class person. Okay, and here I have a function called as void print name. I'm going to take a string name over here, and I'm going to print name over here. Okay, I'll tell you what an abstract class is right now. Now you're thinking like okay, sorry, I shouldn't be doing this. Sorry. Repeating. Okay, print name. So this is called as an abstract class. What this abstract class does is it tells you what functions you should use, but it doesn't tell you what you should do with that function. All right, so let me do this. Class student. So how we are going to use an abstract class? Class student implements person. Okay, and I'm going to do an override over here. Override void print name of string name print the name is dollar name. Okay, I don't know if the compiler will allow me to do this, but it's fine. Now I can also have a separate thing called as a class teacher. Okay, class teacher also implements person, and also I can use the same function name, but what I can do is the teacher's name is, okay, I'll make this, the student's name is student's name is name, the teacher's name is name. So both of these are implementing an class called as an abstract class. An abstract class defines a function, but what you do with that function is left to the individual classes over here. All right, now as usual, let us make objects for each of these actual classes. You cannot make an object for an abstract class. Okay, student s is equal to student of, and teacher t is equal to teacher of. Okay, now what we are going to do is s dot print name of Nitin, and I'm going to do t dot print name of Kumar. Okay, not Kumar, maybe it should maybe NKB or something like this. Okay, now when I hit run, implements person. Did I get this wrong or something? 1 second. I guess this wouldn't work, but what did I do wrong?
You missed the parenthesis. Class teacher.
Oh, okay. Wait, class teacher. Wait, no. Where did I miss the parenthesis? No. There's no parenthesis while declaring a class. Maybe I did something wrong.
And teacher.
What?
Class teacher.
You have
You
missed
missed the parenthesis there.
class teacher. Ending,
Where?
ending-
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, cool. Amazing. Thanks. Okay, there we go. The student's name is Nitin, the teacher's name is NKB. All right. Now what if I change this thing over here? It gives an error over here. Now this is a really good practice to have. If you want several classes to follow a principle, to have a really strict blueprint. For example, in the ancient times, the ancient people had a blueprint for houses, right? What we are doing is we are implementing the same blueprint, but we are trying to execute it in a different way. But if you are not following that blueprint, something wrong will happen. So that is what we are doing here. We are doing strict rules. You are going to implement this abstract class, and you are going to do the exact same function name to keep it consistent. That is what overriding does. What override does is it's going to give a different executable, how do I put this? It gives us a different way to implement this function over here. This function does nothing over here. So this class decides that, okay, I'm going to print the name in this way, and this one I'm going to print it in this way. So that is what overriding does. And abstract classes gives us a strict policy for classes to follow. So that is abstract classes. Even this you will be using in the future, if not right now. In Flutter, there is this thing called build function. Okay, I'll get to that later, but just keep this thing in mind. This entire thing, please keep it in mind because this is important. Okay, so this is abstract classes. There's a entire different video about something called as Dart mixins. Okay, Dart mixins, it's a really huge topic. It's not a really huge topic, it's a fairly big topic that I don't want to cover right now. I'll send a really good video which is made. Okay, he's explained it beautifully. So I'm going to send you that for you guys to look into what mixins are. Even mixins you won't be using anytime soon. So if you are really interested to look into what mixins is, I'll share that link as well tomorrow. All right. So This is about classes and objects, abstract classes, and overriding methods. So that was a lot. Okay, so finally we are going to enter into asynchronous libraries. What is asynchronous libraries? Let me remove all of this. Let me clean everything up. Now, for example, let's say, okay, let's take an example for asynchronous programming over here, which is explained beautifully. Okay. Let me use the same example and explain. Let's not waste our time. Okay. Sorry, getting that. Okay, so one second. Let me just confirm that I'm running this right or not. Okay, fine. Okay, so you have a main function, right? For example, you have a database. Everyone are familiar what a database is? Hello? Are everyone familiar what exactly a database is? Okay, fine. I don't know if anyone knows it, but let's imagine this thing. So what is a future? A future is something that that you are expecting it to happen. For example, when I run basic functions, right? Let's say get print a of. When I do this and I have another function over here, void print a of int a is equal to 10, print a. Okay, so this we have two functions over here. I'll tell you what future void is. So we have two functions over here. One is void print a and one more is future void fetch user. Okay, future void print a, print future. Yeah, let me just modify this so that you guys can get it. This is also really important concept. You will be using this a lot, like super a lot of the time. So pay close attention to this. I'll try my best to explain it. Okay, so we have two functions over here. One is a regular void print a and the one more is a future void print a. So I'm like, what you're wondering, what is this future void print a? So let's see what it is. So void main. So when you're just printing a, right? I'm going to run print a. You can see both prints at the exact same time. So first 10 prints and fetching user order prints that. So that is really instant. Now what if you have an operation, for example, you want data from the internet. Okay, it will take time for your Wi-Fi to for internet to go to that website or something and fetch data from there. It will take a while. For example, let's say it takes 2 seconds to do that. Don't worry about this. Future or delayed basically stops the holds the compiler for 2 seconds captive. It's like, okay, for 2 seconds you're not going to run. That's what this statement is telling. You're telling that please wait for 2 seconds and then you can execute this statement. Don't worry about any of this. Just understand the concept. All right. So if you want to fetch something from the internet will take time if it is slow. For example, it will take 2 seconds to fetch some data. That time you have to wait for it. While you're waiting for it, the program should not. Okay, someone else wants to join now. Cool. Okay, so while you're waiting for that internet data, right, your app shouldn't hang over there itself. It has to do something. It has to give a loading screen or anything like that. So let's assume that this print statement over here is a loading screen and I'm going to make a call to this function over here. As you saw, calling this function was instant because it's not delayed over here. But here, let's assume that future.delayed 2 seconds is the time your Wi-Fi takes to fetch the data from the internet. So your program has to wait 2 seconds. But while it's waiting, no, you have to give a loading screen to the user. How you are going to do a loading screen? You're just going to, for now, let's assume that we are printing fetching user order. So when I hit run, it's going to print 10, it's going to fetching user order, and after 2 seconds it print this. So it doesn't matter if I have 100 statements over here. I can have 100 statements over here. Okay. And it's going to execute only after only when it gets this thing. Okay, as you can see over here, it print every single thing, fetching user, and then it's going to print this. Whenever it wants, it's going to return a value. So that is what this thing does. Now, what if you want to have something like fetched user data? Fetched. Oh, sorry. Print fetched everything. Okay, you want to print this statement only after you get this value after 2 seconds. So how you are going to do that is by using the await keyword. When you use the await keyword, right, what you're going to do is you're going to wait for this 2 seconds to complete. You're waiting for this thing to finish its process, and only then you're going to execute the remaining statements. Before that, if you're going to exclude await, okay, let me just go. When you use the await keyword, right, the main function will become asynchronous. Okay, you're going to have to use the word asynchronous after the function name and brackets if you want to use the await keyword. So what this is going to do is, I'm going to hit run now. It's going to wait. It's going to wait for this function to return a value, and only then it's going to continue execution. Now what if I remove this thing, await keyword over here? You did not remove sync, you can just remove await keyword. Now it's future a 10 fetched everything. Now if I hit run now, it's going to be 10 fetched everything, and only then it's going to have a future. In this case, if you don't use the await keyword, now the program won't wait for this future function to complete. It's going to execute the remaining program, and only when this completes, it's going to print the value whenever it completes. So when you use the await keyword, it's going to wait till this function is done finishing, and only then it's going to print the rest of the program. Okay, so this is how async and await works. Now when you're doing an await, right, this function should be a future. This is how you're going to do future void print future, print here. So this is the format. You're going to use the future, and then you're going to use a data type inside. For example, I'm going to return future dot delayed return 10. Okay, I don't think I can do this. Oops. Okay, sorry. 10. Are you not won't allow me to do anything? Okay, I know why. Yeah, there we go. Are you going to do something? Okay, no. What is wrong? Have I missed some bracket again? I apparently did. Didn't I? Did I? I have no idea. Okay, apparently I did. So what if I try to return here? There we go. Okay, never mind. Okay, cool. So right now what I did was I changed the data type of this thing to int, and I'm going to have a variable over here, int a is equal to await the future of a, and I'm going to print a over here. I'm going to hit run. So let's wait and see what happens. Okay, this is taking its own sweet time. All right. It's been like how long? 1 hour 30 minutes. How many of you are still back? Okay, 26 of you. Not bad. I don't know if you guys have muted and gone away or what, but all right. I didn't expect that many to stay back. Okay, so 10 fetched everything. So what is doing over there? I just changed the data type of this future future function, and after 2 seconds I'm returning an integer back, and I'm going to await that function, store a, and then going to print the remaining stuff. All right. So now what if I don't put await over here? What is going to happen? Let's see. I'm going to hit run, and it's going to give us an error because it is expecting a value of it is going to expect a value from this function immediately. It doesn't know if it's a future or not. That is why you have to use the keyword await over here, so that it can wait for this thing, and then it can wait for the function to return a value and then do the assignment over here. So that is asynchronous programming. All right. So that was everything I think for today.